The name of the story is Chrysanthemum by Kevin Henkes. Chrysanthemum is a type of a flower, and it happens to be this girl's name. Let's find out what happens. Chrysanthemum by Kevin Henkes. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. "Ah, she's perfect," said her mother. "Absolutely," said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. "Her name must be everything she is," said her mother. "Her name must be absolutely perfect," said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. You see, all of these squares and all of these pictures, they're showing her life cycle when she was a baby, an infant, a child, and now she's getting older. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Can you try to say it? Say it with me. Chrysanthemum. That's a hard one. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on her birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum. Say it with me. Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect. And then she started school. On the first day, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way. "Hooray!" said Chrysanthemum. "School!" But when Mrs. Chud took roll call, everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. "Ah, ha, ha, ha. Ah, ha, ha, ha. What a funny name. Ah, everybody's laughing. That's not Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha at all. They're making fun of her name." "It's so long," said Joe. "It barely fits on your name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "You're named after a flower." Chrysanthemum wilted. Remember? That means like she fell. Or we said when a flower wilts, it falls. Your feelings can fall too. She wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. Ugh. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed, that means she told Mrs. Chud, that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. "That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the entire alphabet," Victoria exclaimed. "Look, the children are in their cots. They're in nap time." "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chud. "Now put your head down. "If I had a name like yours, I would change it," said Victoria, as the students lined up to go home. "I wish I could," thought Chrysanthemum miserably. "They're so mean, her friends. They're bullying her name. They're bullying her." "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag." That means barely. "And I'm named after a flower." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "Your name is beautiful." "And precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome," said her mother. "It's everything you are," said her mother. "Absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That's a board game. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed her name was Jane. It was an extremely pleasant dream. That means she had a really nice dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper, that's her dress, and she walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Say her name with me. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria, as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, "A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things." "Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria," said Mrs. Chudd. "Now put your head down." "I just cannot believe your name," Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. "Neither can I," thought Chrysanthemum miserably. "Welcome home," said her mother. "Welcome home," said her father. "School is just no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "They said I even look like a flower, and they pretended to pick me and smell me." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "They're just jealous." "And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced," said her father. "Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours?" said her mother. "After all, it's absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a little better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting. And another evening filled with hugs and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. And she sprouted leaves and petals, and Victoria was there picking her, and she plucked the leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possessions and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route possible to school. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. "Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum," the flowers seemed to say. Uh-oh, she thinks that everybody's making fun of her, even the flowers. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice was like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. That means they couldn't say a word. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the students in the scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. And Joe was chosen as the all-important pixie messenger. They all had jobs. And Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. Chrysanthemum's a daisy. That's another type of flower. Chrysanthemum's a daisy, said Joe, Rita, and Victoria, chanting, thinking it was wildly funny, so funny. But Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful, so horrible, that means. "What's so humorous?" asked Mrs. Twinkle. That means, what's so funny? "Chrysanthemum," was the answer. "Look at how long her name is," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on her name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "She's named after a flower." My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Joe. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita, pointing. And, said Mrs. Twinkle, I'm named after a flower too. You are, said Victoria. Yes, said Miss Twinkle. My name is Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. Mrs. Twinkle just made Chrysanthemum's day. She was saying such good things about her name. She said that her name is absolutely perfect. She didn't let the other children make fun of Chrysanthemum. And Mrs. Twinkle's name is also like a flower. Chrysanthemum could scarcely believe her ears. She blushed. She beamed. She bloomed. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. Call me Marigold, said Joe. That's a flower. I'm Carnation, said Rita, pointing. That's another flower. My name is Lily of the Valley, said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. The end.